I had the long watch on the eastern spar of the Ashgrave Array, the night the sky over the Palliser Strait split open, and I want to say, I felt something profound in that instant. The truth is simpler. I felt nothing. That was the entire point of 40,000 years of work. That I would feel nothing, and neither would anyone standing on the ground 3 kilometers below me. My name is Yoren Cade. I have held a rifle on that spar for 11 years, though the rifle has never once needed firing. What I actually hold is attention. That is the job. The array does not exist to shoot anything down. It exists to watch, without blinking, without drifting, without being told what to think by anyone who is not us. My grandmother called it the ward. Her grandmother called it something older that has not survived translation. What survived was the discipline, unbroken, generation into generation, long after anyone alive remembered why we started. I remembered why, that night, because they came back to test it. The old accounts say the compact ruled Earth's mind for 900 years before the withdrawal. Not with armies, not with fire, but with a broadcast layer laid so deep into human perception that our ancestors mistook obedience for their own idea. They called it the hush. It did not command, it suggested. It shaped what a crowd noticed, and what it let slide past unremarked. What a leader believed was consensus. What a child believed was normal. Whole centuries of human history were edited from the inside, quietly, by something that never had to raise its voice. When the compact finally withdrew, bored, we think, or reassigned to richer territory, they left almost nothing behind to prove it had happened. Just a species that woke up slowly, over generations, to the shape of the leash it had been wearing. We did not build weapons first. We built minds. That is the part people outside this world never understand about us. The first 3,000 years after the withdrawal were not spent on warships. They were spent teaching a species how to notice when it was being told what to feel. Still-mined halls went up before shipyards did. Squat, unglamorous buildings in every district, where children sat with instructors and learned to hold a thought at arm's length before deciding whether it was theirs. Learned to ask, of any strong feeling that arrived without cause, whose idea was this, really? It sounds like a small thing to teach a child. It is not. It is the hardest discipline our species ever built, harder than any engine or any weapon, because it has no visible enemy to aim it at. You cannot see a suggestion coming. You can only train yourself, and your children, and their children after them, to notice the shape of the door before it opens. It became doctrine, then culture, then something closer to instinct. Only after that foundation held, after 12, then 20, then 30,000 years of unbroken clarity passed from parent to child without a single lost generation, did we begin building the things that now ring the planet. The cradle line, 41 spires like this one, each throwing a field that does one deceptively simple thing. It keeps every mind beneath it exactly as sovereign as it woke up that morning. Nothing gets in that we did not choose to let in. Nothing gets edited that we did not choose to edit ourselves. We built the warships after that, and the orbital platforms after the warships, because a mind that cannot be quietly taken does not need to be defended by force nearly so often. Force became the last line instead of the first, which is a different way of building a civilization than most that come looking for us seem to expect. The warships came later still, and they are real, and they are vast, and none of that was the point that night. The point was that when the sky opened over the strait and their flagship came through, long and dark and older looking than anything we build now, its hull scarred in patterns that read like a language nobody had used in millennia, the first thing it did was not fire. It spoke. Not with words. With the hush. I felt it arrive the way you feel a draft under a door. A pressure behind the eyes. A gentle suggestion that everything was fine. That lowering the array's field for just a moment would be reasonable, generous, the correct thing a civilized world does for visitors. It was patient. It was old. It had worked on us once for 9 centuries, and it clearly expected it would work again. Because as far as the compact's records were concerned, nothing had changed down here since the day they left. I did not lower anything. I did not feel the urge fade with effort, the way you fight off a craving. It simply had nowhere to land. 40,000 years of still mind training does not argue with a suggestion. It does not even hear one as a suggestion. It hears weather, and lets it pass. Below me, across an entire hemisphere, 40 million people did exactly the same thing, because we had all been taught by the same unbroken line. I watched their flagship hang there a long time, broadcasting into a silence that did not answer, and did not resist, and I thought about how strange it must have looked from their side. A world with warships stacked in orbit that did not scramble, defense spires that did not power up their weapons, cities that did not panic, did not riot, did not do any of the things a pacified world is supposed to do when its old masters knock. We simply kept doing what we had already been doing, waiting, watching, not afraid, not provoking, not performing readiness for their benefit. We had stopped needing to perform it 40 millennia ago. Through the long scope I could make out figures moving behind the flagship's forward glass, backlit, gesturing at instruments the way anyone gestures at instruments that are telling them something they do not want to be true. I have no way to know exactly what they saw on their side of that hull, but I know what 41 spires and an unbothered planet must have looked like on a sensor board, built to register fear, obedience, or panic, and finding none of the three. Their hull carried scars from some other war on some other world, older damage patched over generations, and it struck me that whatever the compact had grown used to finding, when it came calling on the worlds it had once shaped, it was not this. Not silence with nothing behind it to break. Their signal changed register twice. I felt each shift, a harder push, then something almost pleading. An old frequency I imagine had never once failed them on any world they'd returned to. It failed here, not because we broke it, because we had spent longer learning to be unbreakable than they had spent learning to break things. An hour before dawn, a single shuttle detached from the flagship and came down slow and unarmed to the flats below the array, running lights steady, no weapons drawn. I watched through the long scope as its ramp lowered, and a lone figure walked out into the open. No honor guard, no display, which told me more about their state of mind than any broadcast had. Their commander stood on Earth soil, looking up at a spire that had not so much as tracked their ship with a targeting system, because it had never needed to. And I understood, I was looking at someone recalculating an entire century of doctrine in real time. They did not ask for surrender. They did not offer one either. What passed between our envoy and theirs, down on the flats, was short, and I was not close enough to hear it, and it is not really mine to repeat. What I know is this. Before full light, the flagship turned without another broadcast, without another word in our heads, and went back the way it came, taking the whole fleet with it. No shots fired, no demands met, because none had been made that could be met. They simply found, 40,000 years late, that the door they meant to walk back through no longer opened for them, and that we were not going to make them a story out of it either way. I stayed on the spar until the sky closed and the strait went quiet again, and I thought about my grandmother, who never saw a warship in her life, and never needed to, because she taught her children to hear the difference between a thought and a suggestion, and they taught theirs, straight on down the line to me. We did not win that night by being stronger, though we were. We won it by having already decided, 40,000 years before they arrived, exactly what kind of mind we were going to hand each other, and then, never once putting it down.